Now, your evidence, as far as I can understand it, has been this, and can I just summarise it? That when you came into the Post Office, you were told that largely the operation of the investigation and prosecution section was being dealt with by a team and that you shouldn't really interfere. That's a summary paraphrase of what you said. Is that about right?
Yeah, you don't. Okay. I think the words used were you don't need to be part of it.
Yeah. And secondly, in similar lines, when you were thinking about the question of what is Fujitsu up to regarding the operation of the system and its coherence or its integrity, you were told, well, that's up to Fujitsu because Fujitsu owns the data, owns the source code, and that therefore they're in control of that. Again, that's about right, is it?
Well, they don't own the data. The data was always going to be the Post Office's if it's generated by branch, but they certainly owned the code of the system.
Right. And the sense that we get from your statement is that it was only towards the end of your tenure, your years at the Post Office, did you start to gain some concerns regarding the system, and therefore you wrote a document to the board, which was a noting document to the board, which was to say ought to be reviewed.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Now, you've been asked a number of questions by Ms. Hodge about the mismatch bug. Can we call it that, just as a simple, short version of it? And you've explained that regarding the mismatch bug, and this is where you put in your statement, you thought that it had arisen in the testing environment rather than the full rollout, yeah?
And the testing environment is one thing, just to make sure we're all talking about this in the same
Remember
place.
how little time I have.
In the pilot,
right?
You've tested it. You think it's fit for purpose. You're now running a pilot over in waves. You run a pilot, then you go in the next wave, and then before you know where you are, there's a sit down and let's now go out into main rollout.
Right. So let's make matters as simple as possible. You did not think it was a bug that was operating in the live environment. That's what you say throughout your statement. That's as you've given your evidence originally to Ms. Hodge, yes? Right. So by the time, in fact, in February of 2011, you're being made aware of this mismatch bug, did you realise that it was important, particularly as against the growing clamour in the public sphere regarding the reliability of Horizon?
It's having listened to the the evidence, and more importantly, having looked at that summary that talked about February 2011, if it's not because like I said, there were certain facts that had symmetry to pilot. The 62 branches, the way the outfall was dealt with, the gains were kept by the postmasters, the debts were managed and kept by the Post Office. Exactly the same process, it would appear, have been carried out on both mismatches, but it's why I thought they were one and the same.
Did you think that the mismatch bug at the time in 2011, when it was raised with you, was important as against the growing clamour regarding the integrity of the Horizon system in public?
Well, clearly the answer to that would be yes.
Right. And can we then go, please, to FUJ 0008 1545. Should come up on screen, and we can see that if we go to page 4, please, on the system, that'd be very helpful. Can we scroll up, please? Right, stop there, please. Okay, so we can see here, this is from you, 18th of February 2011, 7:58 in the evening, and it's to Mr. Russell and Mr. McLean, and it says, Will, I need to sit down with you and possibly several others just to understand these latest issues on Horizon and where we are with them. This is very important as there's a lot of media interest in Horizon at the moment. Then you're asking, would it be helpful is if you could, doesn't matter about the English, if you could send me a written summary on what the integrity issues are and what's been done about them, okay? So we can see that at that point in time, there was no doubt in your mind that this wasn't just important, this was very important as against the media issues that were current at that moment. Do you accept that, Mr. Young?
Agreed.
Right. Now, let's try and work this through. There's no mention in the document where you, just before leaving Post Office, you say to the board that there needs to be a review of the system. There's no mention of the mismatch bug in that document.
No, there's not, no.
No. There's no reference by you to the board of this very important issue as against a lot of media interest going on at the time. There's no reference by you to the board of this very important issue either, is there? You don't take it up to the board?
No, there's not. And there's equally, there's no reference to me via Fujitsu or via Leslie or via my own team with that regard.
Yeah. Well, shall we just look at your own levels of personal responsibility to start off with?
Okay.
Because you appear to be the person that people are going to. They're saying, Mike, look, there's this problem, and it's a problem in the live environment. Now, if we're talking about personal responsibility, you're someone that talks a fair bit in your statement and your evidence about your experience, both in background, in the armed forces, then the police, and then in systems and operations. Now, this is being relayed to you as being an important issue in the live environment out with the Post Office. It was your responsibility to take this to the board, wasn't it, Mr. Young? And you didn't carry that out.
Yes.
You also were aware that there was an implication, you must have been aware that there was an implication with bugs in the system, the live system, that this could impact upon investigations and police cases that were being considered and cases that were being taken through the court. You mentioned a couple of times that with your background police experience, that things were of interest to you on occasions, and you used that experience to analyse matters. You must have been aware that this was going to go to and implicate issues that related to police cases. It's true, isn't it, Mr. Young?
Possibly. And the only reason I'm hesitating to give an affirmative to that is I probably was looking at this purely from an IT standpoint. But does it have implications around those people that have been prosecuted? The answer is yes. I understand that.
And you did nothing about that either?
Can we just take a step back?
Did you or did you not do something about that, Mr. Young?
I'd like to take a step back, if that's all right.
I prefer you to answer the question, but let's
you
have your step back.
If I can take a step back, right? I thought this was tied to, and I'm wrong, clearly, having gone through this now, I thought this was tied to the original Oracle bug, which I thought had been dealt with. Clearly, that's not the case. I'm going to come back to the point I made before, because I don't want that to get lost. Usually, and I don't know of any other occasion potentially where this may have occurred, usually when something like this happens, a major incident is generated. That's not by me. That's by the people operating the system. And they sit both sides of the fence in IT and in Fujitsu. And at the point a major incident comes out, the executive team and the boards get those major incidents along with me at the same time. That's missing. Also, what's missing is any sort of executive overlay from Duncan, Gavin Bounds, or anyone in Fujitsu out of courtesy. To me, that's missing too. Okay? So I'm sat there, I think at the time, seeing this as part of the original Oracle issue. It clearly isn't. Okay? Is it a miss by me? In answer to your question, the answer is yes. Had I known that it was a new bug, managed in the same way in all its various facets, and miraculously appearing to affect 62 branches like the original one did, I would have had phone calls both to Fujitsu and to my board colleagues. But there is a process that sits in IT from a service delivery and IT point of view that doesn't need me in the link. If Mike Young is away on leave or ill, it doesn't all fall flat on its face. There are processes and procedures that kick in that allow this to get escalated with all of the backdrop of how it's come about and what's being done about it. I don't see any of that in this or in the disclosure process. That's the only point I'm trying to make.
All right.
So, do I accept?
Can I summarise this? Otherwise, it won't be 5 minutes, it'll be 15.
Yes, sir.
The position is that you would have expected that one way or another, this should have got to the board. You were one possible means of getting it to the board, but there were others. The reality is it didn't get to the board. Is that it in summary?
From the disclosure documents, yes, sir, that's the case.
So the position is, Mr. Young, you and others all failed to do your job properly as regards this issue. Is that fair?
No. I've said why it's not fair.
Right. All right.
Last question on this. The document I've asked to go on the screen says this. I need to sit down with you and possibly several others just to understand these latest issues. So, in fact, that reply written by you tells us that these were the latest issues. They weren't the previous issues. You knew these were separate to the earlier ones, didn't you, Mr. Young? I'm
not disputing that when I read that now, but in the happening, in the operation, that's what I was seeing. I was seeing something related to the original Oracle bugs.
No further questions.
So I don't dispute that point.